When it comes to domestic violence, psychologists, psychiatrists have all kinds of theories. And many of the theories have facts in them. But I'm not here to discuss psychological theories. There's something I want to point out to you. There's something I want to draw your attention to. Because I want you to notice something. You know of me, I always tell you to look at the bigger picture and not just look at the surface. What you see on the background of this video is, is a description of how the cycle of domestic violence operates. You have the honeymoon phase. It always starts off good. Then tension builds up. After the tension builds up, the tension automatically will lead to an explosion. Things escalate. But then, slowly, things calm down back into the honeymoon phase. And then it starts all over again, over and over and over again. To outsiders, it's often obvious what's going on. But to those that are chained by it, they often don't see it. Or they don't want to see it. Those are two things. In any case, the cycle of domestic violence is a self-sustaining loop. It's sustainable over time, but only if there are sufficient victims to keep the negative charge going. Because in the cycle of domestic violence, there are two parties. I'm first talking about common domestic violence between couples, and then I'm going to give the bigger picture, how it relates to society. In a domestic violence, with a couple that's affected by domestic violence, you have the batterer. Now in this case, I often say it's the male, but it can also be the female, but okay, let's say it's the male. He's the batterer, and he wants to discharge negative energy. He wants to discharge emotional and mental frustration. He does this on the spouse, or on the girlfriend, or anyway, on the significant other. The significant other doesn't notice that negative energy is being dumped on her, because it happens slowly. She realizes something is amiss, but she can't put her finger on it. And when the explosion comes, it's obvious something's terribly wrong. But when that happens, she's so shocked that she can't think, so she just wants to escape. But escaping is not that easy. So when the batterer calms down and acts sweet again, she's relieved. And then she thinks, you know what, I've learned from it, I know how to do it better the next time. So there are two parties that both seek relief. The batterer seeks relief, as well as the victim. Because if the victim was not relief centered, if she was not seeking relief, she would have noticed immediately, okay, there's an explosion, I need to be delivered from this. And if she would have been focused on deliverance, she wouldn't fall back into the honeymoon and remain in the cycle. So the cycle continues because both the batterer and the victim have a vested interest in the cycle. The batterer wants to discharge himself, and the victim wants the self-validation of managing her situation. And so that's why when the honeymoon phase comes back, she feels empowered. She has been able to overcome this, and the relationship becomes better. But the relationship never gets better, because the return to the honeymoon phase is a short-term advantage and expires very quickly. And it's this short-term advantage that blinds her from seeing the bigger picture, that it's really a cycle she's in. Now, how does this relate to society as a whole? You have the population, okay? Replace batterer with the population. The population has expectations collectively that they want to see manifest. But in order to manifest these expectations, people need to make effort. But people are divided on how the effort should be distributed amongst the community. So this brings tension. When there is tension, the population, that includes, let me say, the families and groups of the population, then seeks a discharge of that tension. And that will fall on the people in society that have the least power, so they can't really fight back. So those are accused, blamed, you name it. And when this goes further, the dumping of the next energy doesn't solve the internal conflicts, so eventually it leads to an explosion in which the minorities or the people selected as targets are killed, persecuted, guns down by racist police officers, you name it. That's the explosion. When the explosion happens, both the targets as well as the population, they want to leave this behind them. So from within the population, you'll have those so-called leaders coming out to come with so-called solutions, and people turn back to the honeymoon phase in which society so-called functions properly and everyone is left alone. The targets want this, to be left alone and to function properly in society, to get along. The population was the same, but because nothing has really changed, there's still denial both on the part of the population as on the part of the targets. There's tension again, and some of the targets may now join the common population, and they will select other targets, and that's how it keeps going on and on and on. Think like this: you have a country, for example, let's say it's, I don't want to use the United States, but you know what, let me use the United States anyway. You have the United States, very big territory, many states. Each state has its own local economy, so economies often are in conflict with one another, but still the union needs to function. But there are conflicts, rivalries, unaccepted expectations people don't want to face. So when tension builds up, a group or several groups in that community receive the negative tension, and eventually the society, American society, believes in the guilt of those people, that they really are guilty. But because they're then being convinced that the targets are guilty, won't really change anything, they now want to act out hatred against targets. Explosion comes. When explosion comes, everyone is shocked, nobody wants it anymore. So then they want to vote for another president, or they want another governor, if it is related to the local. Then the new president, new governor comes, people are relieved, but then it starts over again. You see how this works? It's a self-sustaining loop, but you need sufficient victims or targets to keep it going. When you're part of the world, you are part of this cycle. Now, either you are part of the population, or you belong to the category of the targets. Now, this is not black and white. This is how it works in the cycle. In reality, you can be both part of the population and still be the target, but of another smaller cycle of violence. But when it comes to the cycle, you're considered either part of the in-group society, or you're part of the periphery, the out-group, or the targets. And you're told to have this, to function well in society and get all the benefits and to be left alone so that violence remains away from you. You need to comply with society, you need to be respectful, you need to be polite, you need to do the right thing so that you will have good karma. You need to work hard to obtain this. And of course, people want this security. That's why they work hard. But while everyone's working hard to obtain this, it becomes obvious that this here is not sustainable. But there's denial that this is not sustainable. and that leads to the tension, and that leads to the dumping, which leads to the explosion, and then people get back to the honeymoon. But what they don't realize is that it's the cycle of violence that's sustainable, but not the honeymoon phase itself. The honeymoon phase is part of the cycle of violence that keeps the cycle going. A lot of folk are stuck over here. They operate in a tunnel vision. The only thing they're interested in is this, the honeymoon. They don't want to know anything about those other two parts of the cycle, because they don't even want to admit it's part of the cycle. Because once they admit this is part of the cycle, then they would see through and realize that what they're aiming for is not sustainable. But they don't want to see that because they've invested everything in it. So it's this scenario that keeps this loop going. Now, when you become born again, you are expected to be renewed in your mind. Because this cycle of violence is what you're trained into by society. You're conditioned to get along in this cycle. If you've been ascribed the role of the target, society expects you to be a good victim and to be fair towards the batterers. And if you're a batterer, you are expected to make sure that you either supply targets or that you comply with the denial, or else you'll become a target also. And because you don't want to become a target, you are provoked or triggered into complying. That's how society trains you. Because everyone wants this. This is the American dream. This is nirvana. This is being left alone, having your will, having your cake and eat it too. This is what folks want. But this cannot be sustained, because it's based on relief seeking. It's not based on something enduring. The cycle of violence is enduring, but people mistake this as enduring and these as interruptions. Well, these are not interruptions. These are all parts of the cycle that temporarily gives this relief over here. But it's this relief that people collectively chase after. Just like a drug addict always wants the marijuana or the cocaine or heroin, whatever it is, or the alcohol. That's how common people are. Now, Christ wants you free from this cycle. And let me tell you one thing, once you're free from this cycle, many of the targets will turn on you. And they'll make you a target. You would think that the targets would relate to you or have sympathy with you. Well, you should expect that, but what you don't realize is that their mind is all centered around this honeymoon. It doesn't matter if they ride in the streets in yellow vests. It doesn't matter how many alternative media they follow. Eventually, they want this worldly relief. That's what they're craving after, just like their oppressors. So when it comes down to it, they and their oppressors belong to the same camp. When you agree with Christ, when you've been freed from this, they consider you an outsider. They consider you non-existent. And they'll even consider you an enemy. Because the peace you walk in, the prosperity you walk in, is the real. While this honeymoon is the counterfeit. So when you walk in the real will highlight that this is a counterfeit. And if this is proven to be a counterfeit, that means that all their investments is for nothing. They don't want to see the bigger picture, that it's all a cycle that they keep enabling and they keep enacting. They don't want to see that because they are craving after this relief. So when you come with the real happiness, with the real peace, they can't handle that. They can't take that because you are a threat to this over here. So they'll subject you to this and eventually this. Then both the targets as the perpetrators both unite against you because you're threatening their world. Well, I hope this video has opened your eyes to the situation. Above all, keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.